Good afternoon, everyone, most especially to Mr. Nardo Tabanao. So the first art form that we will be talking for today is painting. So when we talk about art, many people's minds would jump first to paintings na naman. Kaya it is considered as one of the most common art form in good. Now, regardless of our age, socioeconomic status, beliefs, preferences, civil status, we tend to know everything about painting. Kaya wherever we go, like schools and other establishments, we often see different kinds and different themes of paintings. Even in our simple homes, we have paintings. Kaya it is ideal for decorations. That's why kung mayroon taong definition or scope sa painting, it's not hard for us to comprehend its concept. Kaya we've been introduced to it a lot of times naman, especially as a students. Kaya sa atong curriculum, gi-emphasize or gi-tagaan dyan yung importansya nga ang mga estudyante is ma-introduce good sa arts or different kinds or forms of arts. And with that being said, what is the definition of painting? So painting is the application or the practice of applying pigment, color, or other medium to a solid surface. It means nga, as long as nag-apply ka og color sa usa ka solid surface para makadepict kag certain image or certain concept, that's painting, regardless of the medium, regardless of the materials na imong gigamit. Bisag unsa pa naka-basic nga materials, bisag unsa pa naka-baratong materials, it is still painting. So the medium is commonly applied to the surface with a brush, but other implements such as knives, sponges, and airbrushes can be used. So the most commonly used nga medium para maka-apply o color sa surface is brush, diba? So kung yung tag-brush in painting, it has a lot of varieties, it has a lot of sizes nga makahatag or maka-generate o specific or particular nga result sa imuhang painting. The same way with mugamit kag laing medium aside sa brush. So lain sad lang iyang mahatag nga result sa imong painting depende sa imong preference or gusto nimo nga mahimong outcome sa imong painting. But as art has moved into mixed media and digital art, the definition of what a painting has become blurred. Kaya nga naman, may mga definition sa usa ka butang, especially sa painting, kaya naghatag mo ng definition kaniha. The definitions are usually derived sa kanang concept or sa mga process nga i-undergo para maka-come up ka na nga particular nga butang. So kaya mo naman ta nga kanang modernized world naman ta no, and from time to time na ay daghan nga mga researches, mga study and discoveries nga ma-establish no almost every day because of the researchers, because of the experts. So, what na kay ba kung unsa impossible karon in terms of painting is mahimo nang possible sa umaabot. Like karon, wala pa nag-establish of painting sa dagat or sa permanent painting sa sky or sa atmosphere. So, what na kay ba? Few years gikan karon mahimo na siyang posible. And as a result, ma-change na pod ang definition or concept sa painting. Paintings are a form of visual art that captures the expression of ideas and emotions on a two-dimensional surface. Meaning, bisan unsa ta ka simple nga tao, like we are just a simple viewer of a particular painting. And usually dili ta makasabot sa painting, dili na to siya ma-appreciate, dili na to mag-gets ang iyang concept. But dili na siya makatarog sa kamatuoran nga tanang artworks, tanang paintings kay nahimo tungod sa particular emotions or feelings sa artist gusto niyang ipadangat through painting. A painting can represent a natural scene or object. May pag natural scene, just like diha sa first image, it depicts the mountains and flowers. And ang mahatag niya ang certain emotions ato is relaxation, calmness. So although painting na siya, makatag ito na siya kuan ingon ana nga feeling once magtan-aw tag inana nga klase sa painting, diba? Especially kung nasa kwarto, nasa living room, most of the times magpahuway ta, maglingkod ta, maghigda ta. Once makakita ta ingon ana nga painting, murag we tend to appreciate life even more, love ourselves even more despite of the difficulties and imperfections sa ato ang kaugalingon. It can also describe a narrative. So may narrative painting, meaning the painting tells a story. It can be nga ang painting na siya gihatag na different scenarios. So as a viewer, syempre mangutana ta unsa may relevance or connectiveness anang mga scenarios in the whole concept of the painting or be wholly abstract. Kami nga tag-abstract kanang ang artist wala siya nagamit og literal nga objects or literal structuring or formatting of a particular object na gusto niyang i-depict sa iyang painting. For example, mana siya nga sa iyang painting na daw naong sa tao, but ikaw kung simple viewer ka, asa man dapitang naong ana, because ang iyang gigamit is pwede nga nag-connect siya mga forms, structures, or shapes and objects kung nga para niya mo na yung own interpretation niya nga mo na nakita siya sa painting. Another thing sa abstract is it has deeper meanings. Now let's go to the origin of painting. Okay, so the oldest paintings are thought to be approximately 40,000 years old. Some of the oldest paintings from the Neolithic period are those found in caves, meaning dugay na kayo ang kinaunhan nga painting. And kung magkunahon na ta, it's very amazing. Kaya ang katong mga primitive men sa unang panahon, kaya nana sila painting because of the availability of the materials nga ilang gigamit, like paggamit nila sa animal hunting, mga stones, and ano nagigamit nila para maka-paint sila sa surfaces sa caves. Nganong sa caves man? Because caves are or were their primary shelter. So in Europe, sophisticated and powerful paintings from this period have been discovered in caves such as Lascaux in France. So the first image, dito na siya na-discover sa cave sa Lascaux in France. Ato ang maobserbaran nga ang mga first painting sa kaniadto nagdepict siya ng animals, humans, kay animal hunting mo na siya number one source or number one way nila para makakuha silang pagkaon, para makasurvive sila sa adlaw-adlaw. In 1994, possibly even more astonishing works were found in Chauvet Cave in the Ardèche Valley, also in France. So the second image, dito na siya nakuha. Now let's go to the painting techniques. So kung yung painting techniques, these are the methods, ways na i-apply sa specific painter, depende sa iyang gusto nga ma-achieve sa iyang paint or gusto niya nga tema sa iyang painting. And you have to always remember po nga daghan kay ni sila. Probably 20 plus or 30 plus na painting techniques. But for this afternoon, I'll only be featuring 10 of them. Beginning with acrylic painting. So acrylic painting, it is executed in the medium of synthetic acrylic resins. Acrylics can dry rapidly, meaning dali siyang muuga. It serves as a vehicle for any kind of pigment, meaning bisud unsa pa nga pigment ang imong isagol sa acrylic, it can produce a great outcome. And capable po siya of giving both the transparent brilliance of watercolor and the density of oil paint. So, man na siya makuha nimo bisan bratuhon ra siya nga kind of painting, unlike sa unlike sa oil painting, makahatag gyapon siya kung unsay characteristics ka mahatag sa oil paint o sa watercolor paint. It serves as a vehicle for any kind of pigment, meaning bisud unsa pa nga pigment ang imong isagol sa acrylic, it can produce a great outcome. And capable po siya of giving both the transparent brilliance of watercolor and the density of oil paint. So, man na siya makuha nimo bisan bratuhon ra siya nga kind of painting, unlike sa unlike sa oil painting, makahatag gyapon siya kung unsay characteristics ka mahatag sa oil paint o sa watercolor paint. They are considered to be less affected by heat and other destructive forces than is oil paint. So, meaning, dili kayo siya sensitive kung gamiton nimo siya. And kung mayong tag-painting, di ba, it takes a lot of effort, time, and energy. So, mausig ka siya if ma-damage ang iyang quality or mapiktuhan ang iyang quality because of those forces or natural forces like ang temperature niya, oxidation. So, mauna siya nga nindot gamiton ang acrylic painting. So they found favorable also among artists who were concerned about the health risks posed by the handling of oil paints and the inhalation of fumes associated with them. So kaya ba kung maghiskot ang painting, libalayan din siya baho. And kanang baho niya, because of those chemicals nga naa sa mismong painting. And makadaot na siya once ma-inhale na to continuously. Whereas, ang acrylic painting, it is proven nga less harmful siya, less maka-irritate sa ilong ang iyahang baho compared sa other paintings. Tungo na nga mga characteristics or desirable characteristics, acrylic paints became immediately popular with artists when they were first commercially promoted in the 1960s. Next, we have the action painting. Please refer to the second image. So it is direct, instinctual, and highly dynamic kind of art that involves the spontaneous application of vigorous, sweeping brush strokes and the chance effects of dripping and spilling paint onto the canvas. So in other words, ang gibuhat ana sa artist is murag giwiris-wiris niya ang painting or nagbuhat siya mga specific brush strokes na murag ma-appear siya nga giwiris-wiris and ana murag gi-spill ra ang paint. But dili na siya ingon nga kanang pwede ra bisag unsa imong styling ana. Nana sila gi yuna-huna ang concept nga mogawas sa ilahang gibuhat. So that's action painting. Makita nimo ang iyahang characteristics sa image. Next, we have the aerial or atmospheric perspective. So, this is a technique used primarily in landscape painting to suggest distance or depth. So, the concept was first introduced by Leonardo da Vinci to describe the use of gradated color to represent the visual effects of atmosphere at different distances. So, ang kanang aerial, from the word itself, mura siya drone shot bitaw, drone image sa usa ka particular scene. So, makita ninyo diha sa example, ang gusto po niyang ipadangat is, di ba, in reality, lahi ang color sa usa ka butang once na ka sa duol o once na ka sa layo, especially kanang mountains, di ba? Sa layo, ang color niya nga mo depict sa ato ang mga mata na is color blue. Kunya kung nato sa duol is color green. The same thing with the image. Depende sa iyahang color characteristics o sa distance po nimo. That's aerial or atmospheric perspective. Next, we have the anamorphosis. So, in the visual arts, an ingenious perspective technique. So, ingenious, meaning clever, inventive na technique that gives a distorted image to the subject represented in a picture when seen from the usual viewpoint, but so executed that if viewed from a particular angle or reflected in a curved mirror, the distortion appears and the image in the picture appears normal. So, kaning anamorphosis, it utilized distortion of the image. So, makita natin sa example, no? But, di ba naman tayo usual viewpoint once maglantaw tag painting, pareha nang maggunita og cellphone. So, kung yung ana, mo pamaagi sa pagtanaw ng anamorphosis na painting, syempre, obvious ra daw kaayo ang iyang distortion. On the other hand, na particular angle, nga if imo siyang tanawon, mawala ang distortion sa image. O kanang magamit po ka og curved mirror as a reflection or imong atubang ang painting sa curved mirror, so mawala ang distortion. That's anamorphosis. Next, we have the Kamayu. It is a technique that employs 2 or 3 tints of a single color to create a monochromatic image without regard to local or realistic color. So, kaning Kamayu, from the definition itself, nagamit siya monochromatic na technique. Makita niyo din sa image, nga usara ka color ang gigamit but with different intensity level, na ay dark gray, na ay gray lang, na ay light kaayo nga gray nga murag padung na siya mo white nga disregard kung unsay tinud-anay ni nga color. For example, diha sa kahoy, di ba color brown man ang kahoy, and then ang iyang dahon is color green. So, disregard ang iyahang real color. That is Kamayu. Next, we have Cassin painting. It is a painting executed with colors ground in a solution of Cassin. It is a phosphoprotein of milk precipitated by heating with an acid or lactic acid and souring. Ang iyang line na term is milk painting. So, milk paint is a mixture of quark, water, pigment, and baking soda or lime. Milk paint contains only natural ingredients and is 100% biodegradable, odorless, safe, and contains no solvents, preservatives, or other additives. So, kani siyang kasing painting, nagamit siya og milk or gatas. Tapos, sagulan nimo og kanang pigment, depende sa kung unsa imong preference. Sagulan nimo siya water, sagulan nimo siya og lime kanang murag aslom ba kay para makahatag yun siya og great outcome sa imong painting. Next, we have chiaroscuro. In art, it is the use of strong contrast between light and dark, usually bold contrast affecting a whole composition. So, siya gigamit sa chiaroscuro. Bold light and bold dark. So, makita na ito sa example, dark ang ihang left side, also ang ihang maragbongbong, but wala na siya nakahinder nga dili makita or dili nimo maklaro ang object nga gi-specify, which is ang mga tao nga nagtapok sa other side, diha ni gawas ang light, either gikan sa bintana or gikan sa putahan. That's chiaroscuro. Next, we have SL painting. So, painting is executed on a portable support such as a panel or canvas instead of on a wall. So, siya SL painting. Nagamit siya kung SL board, bitaw diha may butang ang canvas para mag-paint ka or para i-display nimo ang imuhang painting instead nga ipapilit or ibutang nimo siya sa bongbong. This is encaustic painting. It is a media technique that involves using heated wax to which colored pigments have been added. So, ang liquid or paste nga makuha nimo, ana is i-apply na nimo siya sa surface, usually sa wood, although canvas and other materials are often used. The term is derived from Greek, meaning a burning. Next, we have the graffiti. It is a form of visual communication, usually illegal, because it involves unauthorized marking of public space by an individual or group. Although, the common image of graffiti is a stylistic symbol or phrase spray painted in a wall by a member of street gang. Some graffiti is not gang-related. And graffiti can be understood as an antisocial behavior performed in order to gain attention or as a form of thrill-seeking, but it also can be understood as an expressive art form. So, sa ingon ganihan nga, it's illegal. Usually, gibutang siya sa kanang mga fences, plain ka na walay sulatan, it's illegal ba na? Kaya dili man na imong panagiyang anong imo man na siya gisulatan. Most of the people behind those graffiti images or graffiti art kay mga gang daw, but dili tanan. Kaya man sila nagkontra-kontra bitaw. And ang reason nila magbutang sila specific concept or specific words diha unsa lang gusto istorya because murag naay ka nang dili sila muuyon sa particular nga kanang pag-manage or particular nga exploitation. It's either siguro sa political, inana sa sistema sa ilahang lugar. Now let's go to the famous famous paintings. First, we have Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. So the Mona Lisa is an oil painting by Italian artist, inventor, and writer Leonardo da Vinci. Likely completed in 1506, the piece features a portrait of a seated woman set against an imaginary landscape. Imaginary ang iyang background. So mangutana ta. Ano man di ay kana diyang subject niya? Tinuod din na. You will find out later on. So in addition to being one of the most famous paintings, that is also the most valuable. Nga naman, permanently located in the Louvre Museum, it is estimated to be worth an impressive $800 million for today. But dili na siya ibaligya. Kay ang kana daw nga painting is para sa tanang tao. Dapat wala daw particular nga person nga makapanag-iya na. So rendered similarly to Renaissance portrayals of the Virgin Mary, the piece features a female figure believed by most to be Lisa Ghirardini, the white of cloth and silk merchant Francisco Giocondo from the waist up. Behind her is a hazy, meaning blurry, di ba? Dili ato maklaro kayo ang iyang background. And seemingly isolated landscape imagined by the artist and painting using sfumato. So kaning sfumato technique, muna siya ay technique na nag-result in forms without lines or borders. So kung imong i-zoom out ang kanang painting, daghan na siya mga forms no, or boundary bitaw gikan sa lawas sa object sa background, pero ang painter wala siya nagamit og lines or obvious bitaw nga linings or boundaries nga makita mo dili pang napita lahi na siya ang object na. The figure sits with her arms folded as she gazes at the viewer and appears to softly smile. Di ba? Di mo mag-gets ang yan smile, an aesthetic attribute that has proven particular eye-catching over centuries. The half-hearted without enthusiasm or energy. So tanaway ang facial expression, di ba? Walay ka energy or even ambiguous. Ambiguous meaning open to more than one interpretation. Di ba? Namta individual differences and we have kanang different ways to interpret things. So kung magtanaw ka sa painting, lain-lain yung tagpuan pagsabot. So, ang nature sa iyang smile makes the iconic painting all the more enigmatic. Enigmatic, mysterious, kakaiba. Prompting viewers to try to understand both the mood of its muse and the intention of its artist. Ano na sa may gusto ipadangat sa artist? And then, unsa mapoy kanang gustong ipadangat po sa muse or sa object mismo nga naa sa painting. Okay, so kanang painting daw, it is a visual representation of the idea of happiness suggested by the word Gioconda in Italian. Leonardo made this notion of happiness a central motif of the portrait. It is this notion that makes the work such an ideal. Kaya nga naman, ang iyang central motif is happiness, pero dili kaayo ni mo siya 100% or completely makita sa facial expression or sa theme sa painting. Her gaze is another bewitching or enchanting or delightful part of the composition. Many believes that her eyes follow you across the room, making her an active participant when being viewed, rather than remaining as an object to look upon. But while her eyes may seemingly follow you, according to German researchers, this Mona Lisa effect actually does not occur in the painting. Kaya in fact, they claim that the woman is always look about 15 degrees to your right. So more likely, naglantaw siya sa imuhang lulungan rather than sa imuhang mata. Whatever the case, perceived or real, her ambiguous expression is one of the strongest reasons for the Mona Lisa's enduring success. Next famous painting is The Girl with a Pearl Earring. It represents a young woman in a dark, shallow space, an intimate setting that draws the viewer's attention exclusively on her. So because of the very dark background, plain black background, na nasa iyang likod, kanang tanang attention na to is adto maglantaw gyud sa mismong object or sa babayi, di ba? So she wears a blue and gold turban, the titular pearl earring, and a gold jacket with a visible white collar beneath. Caught in a fleeting moment, sumunod ka nang nasakpan bitaw siya, she turns her head over her shoulder, meeting the viewer's gaze with her eyes wide and lips parted as if about to speak. Sumunod siya ganang nasakpan, but dili mo makita sa iyang facial expression nga nakuratan siya. Murag ka nang gi-expect na, probably niya, nga makitan siya or masakpan siya, murag na siya, gusto siyang reason out or something like that. So her enigmatic expression coupled with the mystery of her identity has led some to compare her to the equivocal subject in Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. So they compare siya. Unlike the Mona Lisa, however, kaning girl with a pearl earring is not a portrait. Kaya may portrait meaning nagpakita o kanang facial expression or nawong sa katao. So dili daw ni portrait ang kaning girl with a pearl earring. Rather, it is a tronie. It's a meaning tronie. It is a Dutch term for a character or type of person. So a young woman might have sat for Vermeer, which is ang iyang painter, but a painting is not meant to portray her or any specific individual. In the same way that Leonardo's piece portrayed an existing person, di ba? Bot pasabot na kaning subject sa Girl with the Pearl Earring, a painting, wala na siya nag-exist in reality, unlike sa katong first painting nga, Mona Lisa. The work attests to Vermeer's technical expertise and interest in his mastery of using light rather than line to create form, while the reflection on her lips and on the earring show his concern for representing the effect of light on different surfaces. So nindot siya kayang painting no, kaya nagamit siya og kanang lighting instead of kanang mga linya-linya. Knowing na black ang iyang background pero makita nimo ang certain reflection sa light, sa lips, sa painting, o sa iyahang earrings or pearl earrings. So the museum, dito sa Mauritius Museum in The Hague, later embarked on a 2-year investigation of the artwork. O ang ilang findings nga gi-publish nila pag 2020. Nagamit sila modern imaging techniques to look at layers beneath the surface. Researchers uncovered a green curtain behind the girl and confirmed that she has eyelashes, though they may be hard to discern. Mao na ang ilahang na-discover. Na daw green curtain behind sa babayi, kunya na po siya eyelashes, so dili siya daling makita sa ato ang naked eyes. Researchers also tested Vermeer's materials, mapping the sources of his pigments. So they discovered that he liberally used the costly ultramarine, a pigment derived from the semi-precious stone lapis lazuli found only in what is now Afghanistan for the headscarf. Kay kaning ultramarine nga iyang gigamit is color blue ni siya. So ato mang makita sa color sa iyang headscarf, color blue. He also used a red pigment derived from an insect living in Mexico and South America for the woman's lips. So the painting has captivated so many people throughout history, drawing unprecedented crowds to the Mauritius, the Art Museum in Hague, Netherlands, where it is now housed. It became iconic for the distinct position of the girl, her enigmatic gaze, and the colors and the delicate quality of the light. Next painting, or famous painting that we have, is known as The Birth of Venus. The composition actually shows the figure of a newly born goddess positioned with a giant shell emerging from the sea. She is practically introduced on the left by the wing-winged god Zephyr and his female peer nga gitawag og si Aura, blowing at her. So giblow siya nga murag kanang moy reason nga nang naabot siya sa dagat. And on the right, by a female figure holding out a lavish cloak or dress to cover Venus when she reaches the shore. She is the embodiment of one of the three Horae, or Hours, minor Greek goddesses of the seasons. Ang floral decoration sa iyang gown suggests na she is the Hora of spring. However we turn, this masterpiece presents an imaginary scene, a myth, rather than a scene from real life, so any disruption is justified. Furthermore, Botticelli never fully practiced any form of naturalism, mausad ang na-depict sa iyang paintings, or any particular painting. So he gave weight and volume to his figures and rarely used a deep perspectival space, and the artist never painted landscape background with great ideal or realism. Next famous painting is the famous Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. It is considered to be one of his greatest creations to date. The painting depicts a tranquil night on an average evening. Yung tranquil meaning walay disturbance, peaceful. So the ambience in the painting evokes some rather strong emotions with the viewer. Depende sa mag-view o depende sa mga interpretation. It can be nga kung layo ka sa inyuhan, magkaroon ka ng painting, you will feel nostalgic of your home. Dominated by vivid blues and yellows applied with gestural verb and immediacy, immediacy is the quality of bringing one into direct and instant involvement with something, giving rise to a sense of urgency or excitement. So the magnificent depiction of the sky renders the viewer in a state of awe. The sky, which consists of these bright gleaming stars, a rarity in today's urban lifestyle, has a way of entrancing the eyes that peer onto the painting. So the reason behind its popularity are, the painting rather moves you instantly, and when you eye it for the first time, the twists and turns of the artist's brush strokes will aid in moving your eyes throughout the painting, thus captivating you entirely. You will instantly be mesmerized with the vibrancy and the fine detailing of the painting, and this is obviously one of the reasons why the painting is considered to be such a masterpiece. And it is also thought that the Starry Night is a depiction of the view that the artist had from where he was staying in Saint Remy, meaning dili siya imagination sa painter or sa artist. The painting can be depicted in many forms, and each individual is more likely to come up with their own perceptions and their own meaning behind the painting. This is to the fact that art is always subjective. Next, we have the James Abbott Macneill Whistler painting, arrangement in gray and black. Number 1, Portrait of the Painter's Mother, is his most famous painting. It has become an icon and has been endlessly characterized. Although commentary on the painting often has focused on the portrait of his mother herself, sometimes criticizing the painting as lacking in sentimentality and warmth, qualities expected in a portrait of one's mother. So this was not Whistler's view. Murag i-criticize ang iyang painting, na syempre, mother man iyang i-portrait sa iyang painting. Niyon ang mga critics nga, or mga other commentators niya na nga, wala daw, dili daw nimo ma-feel or makita sa painting ang warmth, ang kanang marabitag affection sa mother o sa painter. Mo na ang reason nila nga, dili daw sila ganahan sa painting. Pero dili na mao ang view ni Whistler. Niya na siya. Sa newspaper nga The World, in May 22, 1878, yan na siya. Take the picture of my mother, exhibited at the Royal Academy as an arrangement in gray and black. Now that is what it is, yan na siya. To me, it is interesting as a picture of my mother, but what can or ought the public to care about the identity of the portrait? Meaning, mauna akong interpretation sa ako ang painting. Wala ko'y paki kung unsay inhang istorya about sa ako ang painting. So in The Gentle Art of Making Enemies 3, Whistler wrote, the masterpiece should appear as the flower to the painter. Perfect in its bud as in its bloom, with no reason to explain its presence, no mission to fulfill, a joy to the artist. So, pasabot niya, as long as ikaw artist ka, na-satisfied or nalipay ka sa outcome sa imong painting, okay na na. Wala siya greatest thing. Basta gusto kang mag-produce og paint. In the tonal painting arrangement of gray and black number 1, a very different feeling is evoked. His mother is shown sitting in a chair, facing left, her feet resting on a stool with dark draperies and framed black prints in the background, apparently reflecting botanical gratitude. So the drapery, ka ng decorative piece of material, usually hung in loose folds and arranged in a graceful design. So masyang kurtina nga ito makita diha sa painting. It is a beautiful patterned blue, and the footstool provides a balance. The background is his studio, as it was, simply decorated. He was deeply influenced with Japanese art and soft harmony and simplicity in his surroundings. So for his mother, his art was his religion. Now, let's proceed to the second art form, sculpture. So what is sculpture artwork? Sculpture is a type of artistic expression that involves modeling, assembling, or molding materials into a three-dimensional object. A wide variety of materials can be used, including clay, glue, stone, metal, cloth, glass, wood, concrete, rubber, and random materials. So, in other words, sculpting is all about grabbing any material para i-form nimo into a particular object na imong gusto. So, pasabot kuhaan nimo ang size, imong tiltilon, imong dukdukon ang usa ka material para mapurma ang usa ka object. That's sculpture. So, among the most celebrated monuments worldwide is New York's the Statue of Liberty, enlightening the world, gifted to the United States by the French and officially put on display in 1886 according to the National Park Service. Seen as a symbol of democracy and liberty today, it's also hard to miss. Mano siya example diha sa kilid. That's the Statue of Liberty enlightening the world. Early forms of sculpture. Sculpture has been used as a form of human expression since prehistoric times. The earliest known works of sculpture date from around 32,000 BC. Early men created utilitarian objects. Yung utilitarian, mga butang nga usual nila gigamit or gigamit nila sa ilang pang-adlaw-adlaw. So, nagamit sila utilitarian objects nga gidecorate nila og sculptural forms. Ancient people also created small animal and human figures carved in bone, ivory, or stone for possible spiritual or religious purposes. Ang mga materials or medium nga ilang gigamit para maka-sculpt sila, muna siya ay available materials sa unang panahon nga gigamit nila for animal hunting. Traditions in carving and casting emerged from the ancient civilizations of the Mediterranean. The cultures of Egypt and Mesopotamia often created sculptures on a monumental scale. These sculptures related to religious life or functioned as a lasting memorial to the power of rulers. So, ang purpose sa sculpture dito sa civilizations of the Mediterranean is for monumental nga mag-represent or mag-reflect sa usa ka particular leader or importante nga tao kanang mura bitog through that sculpture, through that monumental scale, ma-remember nila forever ang memory sa maong important person. On the other hand, in ancient Greece and Rome, the human form was a dominant subject in sculpture, and the artists of classical Greece achieved a high degree of naturalism in sculpting the human form. Tingnan naman kung unsay mga physical attributes or features sa tinud-anay nga tao na depict na siya sa sculpture dito sa Greece and Rome. From the rigid archaic male figures known as koroi, muna siya diha ang example, of the 6th century BC to the naturalism of classical Greece and Rome, the human form was considered the most respected subject matter of art. Now let's go to the 4 basic types of sculpture, beginning with stone carving. So carving stone is a work in which the controlled removal of the stone shapes fragments of rough natural stone. Great example of stone carving is the Easter Island heads, also known as the Moai, by the Rapa Nui people who carved the figures in the tropical South Pacific directly west of Chile. So the Moai monolith, carved from stone found on the island, are between 1,100 and 1,500 BC. Moai statues were built to honor chieftain, may tag-chieftain ka na important leaders sa kaniadto, or other important people who had passed away. They were placed in a rectangular stone platforms called aho, which are tombs for the people that the statues represented, and the Moais were intentionally made with different characteristics since they were intended to keep the appearance of the person it represented. So, sa pag-carve nila, sa usa ka specific figure, sa island head, naningkamot sila nga mapareha gid ang facial physical characteristic sa usa ka tawo nga namatay. So ilang subayon. As with many things on earth, time took its toll on the statues and buried them in sediment and rocks, hiding and preserving the torsos. When torsos, these are the trunk of the human body. So what was about na ay lawas ang mga Easter Island heads? Patatabunan na siya as time goes by due to a lot of factors like erosion, weathering dito sa island. However, a team of archaeologists developed the Easter Island Statue Project to better study and preserve the artifacts. Through this work, the team excavated several of the heads to reveal the underlying torso and the body. After approvals, the archaeologists excavated 2 of the Easter Island heads to reveal their torso and truncated waist. The heads had been covered with successive mass transport deposits on the island that buried the statue's lower half. These events enveloped the statues and gradually buried them to their heads as the islands naturally weathered and eroded through the centuries. Easter Island was formed with successive Pulucan and Holocene volcanic flows consisting of basalt and andesite. In addition, volcanic tuffs were deposited in the volcanic crater, which is the primary stone used for carving the monolith. Moai statues. So most of the statues are located along the Ranwa-Raraco volcanic cone. Kaya kaning Easter Island, naan siya tulo ka volcanoes, which acted as the quarry that supplied the Rapa Nui, the monolithic stones which were used for carving. In order to carve and place the statues upright, the Rapa Nui used large tree trunks that were placed into deep holes in chasm to the statues. They then used rope and large tree trunk to lift the statue upright in the place. The Rapa Nui carved the heads and front side of the statues while they were lying on the ground, then completed the backs after uprighting the stone statues. The tallest of the statues comes up 33 feet high and is known as Paru. Next, we have bronze casting. So bronze casting is the process of pouring molten bronze into a hollow mold to create a positive bronze sculpture or object. Methods of bronze casting like lost wax, ceramic shell, and sand casting are used to produce bronze sculptures, instruments, medals, tools, plaques, and more. So example diha man siya ito the phyllotres or the phyllotres. In other words, or in English, the spinner. So the woman in Henry Kirk Brown's sculpture holds a distaff. It is a stick or spindle onto which wool or flax is wound for spinning. In the crook of her right arm, twisting wool or flax into thread and onto a spindle. So this classical portrayal of a domestic task evokes the mythic three fates or Greek gods or Murai. It is a group of three weaving goddesses who assign individual destinies to mortals at birth. Their names are Clotho, the spinner. Muna siya diha. Example, si Lachesis or Lachesis the alloter, o si Anthropos or si Atropos the inflexible, one of whom spins the thread of life. So ang story ana is nana sila golden thread. Ang kana si Clotho or spinner, muna siya mag-spin sa golden thread para mahibawan kung unsa mga certain events or experiences nga ma-experience or ma-face sa usa ka tawo. Dayon ang kana si Lachesis or Lachesis the alloter, siya mo'y iyang doon ang golden thread sa usa ka specific na tao para mahibawan kung asa siya kutob. Unya kana si Atropos, ang inflexible, siya mo'y mag-cut sa thread pasabot na patay na ang usa ka tao or diha ra siya kutob like mamatay na gid siya. Brown modeled the Phyllotres Italian first spinner in New York and cast it at the foundry he established there in the year 1848 after his return from Italy. The Phyllotres was commissioned by the American Art Union, an organization that aimed to bring the fine arts to middle-class audiences. So she is dressed in a classical peplus or peplo. Yung peplos or peplo is a type of dress worn by women in Greece in 500 BCE. There was no tailoring in ancient Greece, so this particular type of dress was made of a big sheet of fabric folded over the top and wrapped around the body. So it was pinned at the shoulders to keep it from falling down and often belted at the waist. Unya kana siya, ang spinner, di ba, ato ma-observe nga nagtutok siya downward in a moment of thoughtful reverie or a state of being pleasantly lost in one's thoughts or a daydream. Third, we have the wood carving. Wood carving is usually accomplished with a knife in one hand or a chisel, resulting in a wooden sculpture or engraved ornament of wood. So that's example, ang nag-carve anak kay si Aaron de Metz. Aaron de Metz play with beauty and distress in his work. The smooth, almost mannequin-like appearance of a figure is offset with the raw fraying that comes from wood shavings. Last basic type of sculpture is clay firing. Clay firing is the process of bringing clay and polish to high temperatures. The ultimate goal is to burn the object until the clay and polish have matured. The firing process turns raw clay into ceramic through high temperature or temperature heating. This usually happens in a kiln. Clay often goes through two types of finished bisque firing and glazed firing. The first step in firing pottery is the bisque fire, when clay turns into ceramic ware. After the bisque fire, liquid glaze is applied to the post and allowed to dry. The second firing is the glaze firing, during which the glaze melts to form a glassy coat on the pottery. Now, let's go to the relief sculpture. So some of you might ask or might wonder, what's a relief sculpture? Dili ba din siya considered as one of the basic types of sculpture? The reason for that is most of the resources nga akong nakita kay mo gyud siya ang for basic type of sculpture niya. Ay ubang sources nag feature nila gyapin nila ang relief sculpture as one of the basic types sa sculpture. Pero kung imo hunahunaon, ang concept or overall concept sa basic types of sculptures are, ang differences nila is ang materials or medium ang gigamit. Ano ba yun? Usap din yung relief sculpture. Ang kaning relief sculpture, wala na siya nagmatter kung unsa nga material or medium ang imuhang gigamit. So you will furtherly understand later on. So a relief sculpture is a style of sculpture where designs or images are set against a flat background. Relief art sculpture is one of the oldest and earliest known forms of sculpting. There are records of relief sculptures that date as far as back as far back as cave art from the Upper Paleolithic period around 25,000 BCE, meaning kaning relief sculpture naa siya background or surface. What are the three types of relief sculpture? First, we have low relief, also known as bas relief, where motifs are only raised slightly above the 2D surface. Next, we have the high relief, also called alto relief, where sculpture projects at least half or even more of its circumference out from the 2D surface. Next, we have the sunken relief, also known as incised intaglio relief or koilaniglyptic relief, where a carving sinks into the 2D surface so the design is below a flat surface level. Now let's go to the 5 most famous sculptures, beginning with Michelangelo's David. Michelangelo's Defiant David statue has captivated the world for centuries. Considered one of art history's major masterpieces, the marble sculpture showcases both the artist's skill and the fine art that focus on or defines the characteristics of Renaissance. The sculpture portrays David, a biblical figure in a particularly well-known narrative. In Samuel chapter 1 verse 17, David battles Goliath, a colossal Philistine, against all odds. An unarmored David knocks down his enemy using a sling and beheads him with his own sword. Given David's esteemed reputation, it is not surprising that the Office of Works would choose to feature the figure as a subject in their sculptural series of historic greats. Additionally, as an independent city-state, the Republic of Florence was aware of the threats that surrounded them. Therefore, they viewed David as a perfect symbol of Florence, as he captured unwavering courage, unexpected strength, and historic perseverance that they saw in themselves. During the High Renaissance, Michelangelo created figurative works that focus on balance, harmony, and ideal form. David showcases his artistic sensibilities through his lifelike, asymmetrical posture known as contrapposto or counterpose, and his realistic and highly detailed anatomy. Next sculpture that we have, or famous sculpture, is Laocoon and His Sons. Laocoon and His Sons is a marble sculpture from the Hellenistic period. Following its discovery in a Roman vineyard in 1506, it was placed in the Vatican where it remains today. In true Hellenistic fashion, Laocoon and His Sons showcases an interest in the realistic depiction of movement. In the action-packed scene, 3 figures frantically try to free themselves from the grasp of sinuous serpents. No matter how much they twist and turn, however, they remain entangled, culminating in a swirling mass of snakes and limbs. It has long been admired for the realism of its anatomy and for the variety of expression in the faces and figures. So, 3 faces, makita na to ang different expressions nga nagipakita, but parihara nga kuan tema sa expression which is negative. They want to escape, nasakitan sila, nagsuffer sila. The University of Cambridge Museum of Classical Archaeology shares. So, 1 beaten, 1 suffering, and perhaps 1 escaping. So, unsa man story ani niya? Like most ancient Greek sculptures, the subject matter depicted in Laocoon and His Sons is based on classical mythology. Specifically, this piece portrays a story from the Greek epic cycle, a collection of poems detailing the Trojan War. According to legend, Laocoon was a prince from Troy who, along with his 2 sons, Antiphantes and Thymbrios, was attacked by sea serpents sent by a god. According to legend, Laocoon and his sons were killed as a punishment from Athena or Poseidon for warning the Trojans about the wooden horse. Pero, this is the rationale offered in Virgil's Aeneid, an epic written by the Roman poet. However, according to other traditions, Apollo sent the serpents to slay Laocoon as a punishment for breaking his vow to the deity not to marry or have children, kay priest Deasia. Next, we have The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. It is the focal point of the Cornaro Chapel's white marble sculptural ensemble, which is situated in an elevated shrine. Bernini's statue of Saint Teresa is widely regarded as one of the high Roman Baroque sculpture masterpieces. So The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa's face portrays Saint Teresa of Jesus, a woman of Spanish nobility who became a nun. This famous masterpiece was ordered by Cardinal Federico Cornaro for his personal chapel. We recognize Saint Teresa of Avila, the Spanish nun. She is known atop a cloud, implying her ascent to the heavens, with beams of gold light flowing down on her. Natural light is infused into the area from a secret window above it. As a look of rapture fills Teresa's face, a winged angel wields a lance poised to be thrown into her chest. The piece exemplifies Bernini's artistic genius and innovation in marble treatment. Like the wrinkles of Teresa's gowns, instead of the restrained plates of traditional statues, are portrayed swirling around the saint, lending to the illusion of motion. The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa by Bernini is the work by which, more than others, represent the artist's desire to combine all arts. Architecture frames the scene, sculpture describes the mystical event, and background decorates the recess. Everything blends into one image, involving viewers personally, while light effects make everything spectacular or better, theatrical. Next famous sculpture is the Perseus with the Head of Medusa by Benvenuto Cellini. So Perseus with the Head of Medusa is a famous statue by Benvenuto Cellini, found in Florence in Piazza della Signoria under the Loggia di Lanzi, and one of the most important examples of Italian man-made sculpture. Cellini, one of the great sculptors of the Renaissance, was commissioned by Cosimo El di Medico to sculpt this work in 1545. The subject is Perseus, or Perseus, standing over the body of Medusa and holding the recently decapitated or diputol nga ulo of the monster in one hand and his sword in the other. The bronze sculpture is full of details which make it unique. According to mythology, the hero has winged sandals for speed, the magic bag to store the head, and the helmet for invisibility. The statue had a political meaning also, and represented the power of the duke who had cut off the head of the republic. So may duke or donkey or whatever it is. Kaya kapantay mo ng other countries like England, nga murag pasa-pasa ra ang ilang power. For example, na kay anak na lalaki, mo na siya may mong prince. O niya, mapasa na siya if makasal ang imuhang anak. So Medusa symbolizes the Republican experiment, and the snakes coming out of her body are the discords that have always reflected democracy. So the fame of the statue in art history also is owed to the extraordinary melting feat that Cellini achieved. The work was very complex as he had to create a flame at a temperature adapted to both the insufficiency of the resin and for a fire in his workshop. Once cooled, melted in one single casting, a long polishing process which started in 1549 was needed. This was finished in 1554 when the statue was presented in the square. So at the 6th Impressionist exhibition in spring of 1881, Edgar Degas presented the only sculpture that he would ever exhibit in public, The Little Dancer, aged 14. The title given by the artist has become one of the most beloved works of art, well known through the many bronze casts produced from this unique original statue following the artist's death. The sculpture was not so warmly received when she first appeared. The critics protested almost unanimously that she was ugly, but had to acknowledge the work's astonishing realism as well as its revolutionary nature. The mixed media of the Little Dancer, basically a wax statue, dressed in real clothes, was very innovative, most of all because she was considered a modern subject, because that is a student of the Paris Opera Ballet. Marie van Guephem, the model for the figure, was the daughter of a Belgian tailor and a laundress. Her working-class background was typical of the Paris Opera School's ballerinas. The derogatory association of the name with dirt and poverty was also intentional. Young, pretty, and poor, the ballet students also were potential targets of male protectors. Degas understood the predicament of the Little Dancer, what the contemporary reviewer jurist Karl Huysmans called her terribly reality. The Little Dancer is a very poignant, deeply felt work of art in which a little girl of 14, in spite of the difficult position in which she is placed, both physically and psychologically, struggles for a measure of dignity. Her head is held high, though her arms and hands are uncomfortably stretched behind her back. In the context of the evolution of sculpture, The Little Dancer is a groundbreaking work of art. The liberating idea that any medium or technique necessary to convey the desired effect is fair game may be traced back to this sculpture. Degas represented a working-class subject, though not an everyday one, with both realism and compassion, but without moralizing. In so doing, he captured with brilliant simplicity the difficult tension between art and life. So this is where my discussion ends. I'm going to be giving the virtual floor to the next presenter.